Here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Cornell Dupree, and I've had some requests to feature more funk, more soul, more R&B, and more jazz, and this episode's going to hit all four of those styles of music. Cornell Dupree is an absolute legend of the guitar. His career started somewhere around 1956, and then in the late 50s, while he was still a teenager, he started doing some session work and working and recording with different groups and artists, and he's nicknamed Mr. 2500. Because in his career, he logged over 2,500 studio sessions, which is unreal. And he worked with everybody. Bill Withers, Aretha Franklin, King Curtis, Wilson Pickett, you name it. You know, Cornell Dupree definitely backed up lots of very essential and important artists and musicians and bands. And definitely, there's really no other way to say it. Cornell Dupree was a badass on guitar, a total legend. And as far as some of those 2,500 sessions that Cornell Dupree logged in his career, I mean, literally, he worked with everybody. Miles Davis, Paul Simon, Carly Simon, Average White Band. I mean, there's tons and tons of people. Freddie King, B.B. King. But here's an image with some of the people that Cornell worked with in his career. And this is just a partial list. I mean, the names and the songs and those sessions just roll on and on. Total legend. So the music and chord-based examples in this episode came from 5 Cornell Dupree-related albums. That includes his first solo album, Teasin, which is on the wall right there. Also the band Stuff, with him and Eric Gale. Also Steve Gadd on drums. Stuff was amazing. They had like 3 albums. There's like Rufus Thomas example and some kind of random stuff. But I basically hand-picked and cherry-picked exactly what I wanted to show. Some cool, guitar parts. And there's so much music, like I just mentioned. Over 2,500 sessions. I mean, that's a mountain of music, but there are certain songs where Cornell really shines, where it's like, man, listen to that rhythm part or that lead. And that's another thing, too, is his style. He was constantly moving between lead and rhythm, and he would play like funky, chord rhythms, and then bust into a lick or a solo or something. And he was constantly moving between chords and melody, and solos and licks. Very dynamic, very exciting player. And there's some cool guitar stuff in this episode, so here we go. With the opening, that was basically me playing around with the middle section of the song Foots from the first Stuff album. And Foots is really interesting. It actually starts with this kind of soulful groove. Like that. I think that's actually Eric Gale playing that part. And then eventually, like the middle of the song, you hear that other riff come in like that. And we're really just playing around with A or A7, like A7, like that G to A, this D to E, that C to D right there, and then that G to A. So kind of like A minor 7, I guess. So you're really just kind of hammering on, those 2 notes. There's like, 4 different sets of hammer-ons like that. And I was also kind of scratching, like trying to keep the time at least, because there's a lot going on during that middle part. The riff comes in, and then like the bass and the drums, there's some keys that come in, another guitar, and they just start jamming during that. And I was trying to replicate some of what's going on in that song right there. And you hear like that D over F sharp to that G5, and it sounds like it's separated. And then eventually like the bass kind of comes in on those lower like root notes and stuff. And then eventually like once it starts, you know, kind of grooving, then you hear another guitar coming in. You know, kind of doing some of that stuff. I was also sliding some sixth, which definitely Cornell loved using sixth a lot in his riffs and also in his solos and melodies and stuff too. So I was really just jamming, literally, during that opening part. That doesn't really sound like Foots. It's just me kind of playing around with that middle section and jamming. And I threw out, you know, some kind of Cornell Dupree isms or ideas. And that's basically it for that first example. Just that single note riff. You know, I was adding like some other stuff. Kind of going like an octave higher with that. Kind of playing with it or whatever, and I love doing that, like taking a song and then just kind of reworking it and turning it into something else. So that was kind of a loose arrangement of Foots. All right, next up's the main riff from the song Ditch Diggin'. This came from the Rufus Thomas album Did You Heard Me? And this is a great example of Cornell's comping style, because more often than not Cornell would just lock into the groove like a machine or a clock, and then occasionally he would like break off and just go wild. But usually he was really locked in to the groove. And this is really simple, but it's kind of showing you how he might arrange chords in a progression, like this. Ditch digging, basically it's an E flat, right? So the bass, right? It's an E flat, so the bass is pounding out that E flat, and basically Cornell's basically just implying an E flat 7 there, grabbing that B flat and D flat, just enough of E flat, you know, 7 right there. That's all over E flat, right? And then when you hear it change, and he went here, now the bass is thumping out A flat, so I went to the 4 chord. So now it's just A flat major right there. So it's a really sneaky way of playing E flat 7 and A flat major, right? But he's just doing 2 notes like that. Common in funk, soul, and R&B guitar, just little fragments and partial chords, and that's really all you need. Next up's the main riff from the song It's a Funky Thing to Do, and this is from Hank Crawford's album by the same name, and Cornell Dupree, you know, played guitar on that album. And this is really cool, like this. Like that. So we're in G right there, and he does this walk up chromatically A sharp to B, and then grab that single G note on the high E, and then it's a double stop there on the 3rd fret, like that. And then he starts sliding 6th right there, right? And then the last time, there's a B flat right there, and then this F, G to D flat, and then it's C to D to B flat, and then F to G. It's like the fill, and everybody's doing that. And it goes right back to the... Really cool song too, check that out. Okay, next up's Help Me Make It Through the Night. And this is another Hank Crawford album that Cornell Dupree played on, and it's the album by the same name, Help Me Make It Through the Night. And this is really cool, R&B, soul. Something like that. And technically Hank Crawford's a jazz saxophonist, but definitely has that soulful R&B kind of sound. So it's basically a little partial E flat major, a little partial F minor, to a little partial A flat major, like that. Right? Think of it like that. But we're doing it like that. And he's also sliding into that A flat right there from that G. You're going to do that E flat, the F minor, and then you're going to do A flat major up here. And you want to slide into that one too. And like the last time you just hit those last 3 chords. You know, that E flat, F minor to that A flat major. But I love that kind of slippery kind of groove and everything. Really cool. Alright, next up's the main riff from the song Feel Alright from the album Teasin, and it's this blues riff in G7, and there's this crazy double stop fill at the end, like this. So we're in G7, and we're grabbing the root note there with the thumb wrap, and then the upper part of that G7 chord, that F and B note. And then you're grabbing this extension up there, like a G sus4. And then you're grabbing that minor to major third, that B flat to B. Like that. And then this scratch and sniff chromatic. You know, that B, C, C sharp to D right there. As that runs its course, then you hear a G octave, and then it's double stops, and he's doing this fast, like hammer-on pull-off. Like that. Cool stuff there. Right, next up's the opening to the song Blue Nocturne from the album Teasin, and this is really slow and soulful and such a great song. And it starts something like this. Something like that. It keeps going. Whatever, just like really expressive and such a cool song too. But that opening part, you're really just playing with a little bit of A major right there, and he's playing like the lower part of the triad, then the upper part, like that A and C sharp, and then the C sharp and E. And it's like a big exaggerated slide into that A and C sharp. And then you're sliding sixth right there, like a double 12 to double 14 back to double 12 with vibrato. And get vibrato right there on the double 12 like that. And then you hear that answered with a little part of A major, like the A major triad here. And then you're going to answer that with an E minor 7 flat 5 right there. Which I love that wicked twist right there. And then do the first part again. You know, something like that. There we go. And there's just something about that. Of course, it keeps going, and then he starts like this melody and just starts playing and jamming. Such a great song, and that's a really interesting opening. Jazzy too. Alright, last but not least is the song Teasin, the title track from the album On the Wall right there. I'm a huge fan of that album. Instrumental, funk, soul, and R&B guitar music. Yeah, sign me up. I love that stuff. And this is really cool, like this. There's actually two guitars there. I'm literally trying to comp Cornell and Eric Gale at the same time. That's really hard to do. But for this first part, we're basically doing octaves there, and then you're gonna slide into this little part. It's technically a little part of B7, but you'll notice there's no B there. There's your A, D sharp, and that F sharp right there. So we're doing, and then the C sharp to B, right? You know, something like that. And then eventually you've got this A flat. So like an A flat power chord and that little single note kind of bent melody. And then do that A flat some more. And it moves to D flat right there. Unison bends right there. Do it again. And then you abruptly, everything stops, and then you hear Cornell do this like released bend on that E note. And then he targets that B. And then you hear the comping. This is actually Eric Gale in the background. So kind of playing with like E7 right there. And that's Cornell doing that part. And then you hear Eric Gale do. It's like he's basically playing with E7 and B7, but like that. And then, and it's all kind of based around that guitar lick. Super funky and super groove. I posted that on my Facebook page like about a month ago. I love that song, and that album jams. Great stuff. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with this look at the chords of Cornell Dupree. Definitely an absolute guitar legend, even though most people on the street probably don't know his name or they don't really know his legacy. But it's really important to notice these players and all that history. I mean, Cornell played with Aretha Franklin, for crying out loud. And there really aren't very many people that could make that claim, but Cornell definitely could. Not to mention Wilson Pickett and B.B. King and Freddie King and everybody else too. But it's really impressive. And yes, I love music, but I also love music history too, and really getting in there and trying to understand the connections and links and where all this music came from and who inspired who and who passed the torch to who. And with Cornell, it's really interesting because, if he didn't play on the song, there's a really good chance Eric Gale played on the song. And then for certain sessions, Cornell and Eric, played the session together. Of course, they worked together in the band Stuff, and Eric basically appears on Cornell solo albums and stuff like that. So they mutually worked together, and were both just complete badasses. Played thousands and thousands of songs and sessions, and historic music for sure. And Cornell's first here. I will get around to Eric Gale sooner or later, but definitely, I love Cornell Dupree. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Nail Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.